Rain poured in torrents over the town, converting the nighttime roads into streams of mirrored neon glow. Lila Wong rushed along the pavement, one hand gripping a paper sack holding her supper, the other securing her large jacket shut against the cold. She had just completed her extended shift at the clinic and had indulged in a rari treat, a small pizza from Luigi's, the modest corner spot that somehow crafted the finest meals in Theria despite its plain look. The tempest had surprised everyone. Weather reports had promised a calm night, but instead, the heavens had unleashed without notice. Lila had no umbrella, and her thin cloth shoes were already drenched. Yet, she couldn't resist admiring how the raindrops turned the common street into something nearly enchanting, with puddles reflecting the light of Theopen's sign from the shop ahead. As she neared the shop, seeking brief refuge under its canopy, Lila spotted a figure crouched against the wall. A man sat on the damp ground, his dark hair stuck to his face, his coat soaked through. He wasn't requesting anything, no extended hand, no sign, no cup for contributions. He simply rested there, eyes locked in the rain-swept road, seemingly accepting his situation. What caught Lila's notice wasn't despair, but poise. Even drenched to the core, there was something in his stance that hinted at a person who had seen brighter times. Behind him, a cluster of hooded youths lingered, occasionally glancing his way and murmuring among themselves. Lila paused only briefly. Her home was still 15 minutes away, and her stomach crumbled in protest, but something about the man's silent resilience touched her. She approached him cautiously, mindful of not seeming patronizing. "Hi," she said softly, "I thought you might like this." She offered the paper sack with her pizza. "It's still warm." The man looked up, surprised by the gesture. His eyes, a rich brown, met hers with astonishment and perhaps a hint of fatigue. He was striking in an unusual way, with several days' worth of stubble and lines around his eyes that suggested both joy and struggle. "That's your meal," he said, his voice unexpectedly polished despite his appearance. Lila shrugged, offering a gentle smile. "I can whip up a sandwich at home." "Why?" he asked, making no move to accept the sack. It was a fair question, one for which Lila had no prepared response. "Because it's pouring," she said simply, "and because sometimes we all need Simeon to see we're getting soaked." Something in her words seemed to touch him. After a moment's pause, he took the sack, opening it to find the small pizza box inside with a single remaining slice. Lila had eaten the rest in her walk, saving the last piece for when she reached home. "It's just one slice," she said regretfully. "It's perfect," he replied, and the sincere appreciation in his voice warmed her despite her damp clothes. The moment might have concluded there a small act of kindness between strangers and the rain, but as Lila turned to depart, the man spoke again. "Would you?" he began, then seemed to think. "I mean, would you mind staying for a minute? Just until the rain eases." Lila glanced at her watch. Her home would still be there in 20 minutes instead of 15. "Sure," she said, sitting on the dry patch of ground under the canopy, leaving a courteous distance between them. "I'm Ethan," he offered, taking a small bite of the pizzassless. "Lila," she replied. They sat in friendly silence for a moment, watching the rain form patterns on the pavement. The shop's neon sign cast a reddish hue over them, and through the glass, Lila could see the curious glances of the cashier. "Do you live nearby?" Ethan asked eventually. "A few blocks away," Lila answered, careful not to be too specific. Despite the unease she felt in his presence, she was still a woman alone at night. "I work at Grace Clinic, just finished a long shift." "A doctor?" "Heist," Lila chuckled softly. "Nurse, still paying off student loans, so doctor is a far-off goal." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Vital work," he said. "More vital than most, I'd say." There was something in his manner, a mix of modesty and insight, that intrigued Lila. This didn't feel like a chat with a stranger on the street. It felt like reconnecting with an old friend. "What about you?" she ventured. "Do you live close?" A shadow crossed Ethan's face. "Not anymore," he said. "Used to have a place on Lakeview Avenue. But lately I've been between circumstance." Lila nodded, not probing further. Everyone had their stories, their reasons for ending up where they were. She had learned in nursing that judgment rarely helped anyone. This pizza, Ethan said, shifting the topic. It's really good. Luigi's, Lila asked, surprised. You know it. Used to go there often. He replied with a faint smile. Luigi's son, Nico, and I went to school together. They continued talking as the rain slowly lessened, sharing small pieces of their lives. Lila told him about her parents, who had moved from Hong Kong before she was born, and about her younger sister studying Garchidork in Oregon. Ethan spoke of wandering, of seeing sunrises inlands, whose names Lila had only seen in ovals. When the rain finally ceased, Lila stood, stretching her tired legs. "I should head out," she said reluctantly. "Of course," Ethan replied. "Thank you, Lila, not just for the pizza, but for seeing me, really seeing me." The simple sincerity in his words moved her. "Maybe I'll see you round," she said, meaning it. "I hope so," he answered. The next morning broke clear and bright, erasing the traces of the previous night's storm. Lila headed to work, her thoughts occasionally drifting to the manshed met. She wondered if he'd found somewhere dry to rest, if the single slice-off pizza had been enough. 3 days later, as Lila was leaving the clinic after her shift, she was surprised to see Ethan waiting near the entrance. He looked strikingly different, clean-shaven, his hair neatly trimmed, wearing a simple but well-fitted shirt and trousers. "Lila," he called, a hesitant smile on his face. "I was hoping to find you," Ethan sheathed, momentarily puzzled by that change. "How did you know where I work?" "You told me," he reminded her gently. "Grace Clinic. Long shifts." Lila nodded, recalling. "You look different." "I feel different," he admitted. "I wanted to thank you properly. Would you let me buy you dinner, a whole pizza this time, not just a slice?" Lila studied him, her natural caution warring with curiosity. "I don't understand," she said honestly. "What happened?" Ethan took a deep breath. "The truth is complex, Hebbigan. I'm not who you likely thought I was that night. I'm not homeless, Lila. I'm actually, hephoused, financially quite secure." Lila's confusion must have shown, because he continued quickly. "I own Lakefront Development Group. We build affordable housing across the region. But you were sitting outside a shop in the rain." Lila said, trying to process this revelation. Ethan's expression grew solemn. 6 months ago, my partner passed away after a long illness. After her memorial, I just disconnected, started wandering the streets at night, sitting in places where people wouldn't know me, trying to make sense of a world that suddenly felt empty. He paused, gathering his thoughts. "That night, when you offered meth at Pizza Slice, it was the first genuine human connection I had felt, and it's not because of who I am or what I own, but simply because one person saw another in need." Lila stood silent, absorbing his words. "I'm not telling you this to impress you," Ethan continued. "Wealth doesn't solve everything. It certainly didn't help me when I was sitting in that rain. But your kindness did. And I'd like to thank you for reminding me that there's still goodness in the world, still reasons to rejoin it." A small smile formed on Lila's lips. "So, you're saying I gave a millionaire my last slice of pizza?" Ethan laughed. "They sound warm and genuine. You gave a lonely man a reason to hope again. The financial details seem secondary." Lila considered for a moment. There was something sincere in his eyes that resonated with her, the same quality that had prompted her to share her pizza in the first place. "Dinner sounds nice," she said finally, "but let's go to Luigi's. I think we both have a history there." As they walked together toward the small pizzeria, Lila reflected on how a simple act of kindness had forged this unexpected bond. Not because he was wealthy or she was particularly generous, but because, in a moment of rain and shared humanity, they had both been exactly what the other needed. "Just while people seeing each other clearly through the storm, you know," Ethan said as they approached the familiar red canopy of Luigi's. "Nico's father used to say that sharing food with a stranger makes them family." Lila smiled, recalling her own grandmother's similar wisdom. "In my family, we say that kindness always finds its way back." And as they stepped into the warm light of the restaurant, greeted by the rich scent of tomato sauce and fresh bread, Lila thought perhaps they were both right. Sometimes, the smallest acts of humanity, a single slice of pizza offered without expectation, could indeed find their way back, bringing with them possibilities neither person could have imagined alone.